Welcome to the first episode of PlayGround, a space for honest conversation about yoga, teaching, and the messy, beautiful work as we grow as practitioners and as a teacher. I'm Cora. I'm a yoga teacher who is as committed as learning as to teaching. And this podcast is here to explore what yoga really means today, beyond the posture, beyond the hashtag, and beyond the hustle. Before we dive in, I would like to introduce my guest today and my teacher, Patrick Creelman. Hi, Patrick. How are you today?
I'm good.
Great. Okay, so great to have you and be the first guest in my podcast.
Thank you.
It's an
I'm
honor.
really happy to be here with you.
So first of all, let me share a little bit about Patrick. Patrick Creelman, he's the founding teacher of Pure Yoga and the Wild Lotus School of Yoga. He's the founding teacher of Pure Yoga Studio and Wild Lotus, a school of yoga you've been practicing since 1990s, and you've learned with a lot of great teachers and masters for a decade, and built a thriving career as a teacher and also as a mentor, while maintaining a very dedicated personal practice, both rooted in physical discipline and also philosophical explorations. Now, you recently started Wild Lotus School, which is living expressions of your approach, a school of yoga, which is shaped by your 3 wheels of teaching framework, blending intelligent sequence, precise techniques, mindful inquiry, and embodied wisdom. So,
right from the text, the back cover of the book. Perfect. Okay. Yes, thank you.
So first, I like to talk a little bit about how I met Patrick, my teacher. I was a full-time mother with 2 kids at the time, and I had severe lower back pain, and I decided to try out yoga and to heal my pain. I did not meet Patrick immediately, but it was about maybe a year or so, then I met him. At that time, I was quite interested in yoga already, but Patrick's approach was very different. And at the time I was doing a lot of like hot yoga vinyasa. It was almost like, I love that numbing space that I have in yoga, but Patrick's approach to teaching yoga was presenting something that was much deeper into the experience instead of just beyond the physical asanas. Patrick encouraged me to do yoga teacher training. Interesting that at that point, I didn't really want to be a teacher, but I remember when I was at training, and one of the exercises to stand in front of my cohort and to teach. I stand and set the first line, and I'm like, oh my God, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I forgot that as a kid, I always wanted to be a teacher. And I'm so great that Patrick encouraged me to be a teacher, remind me that this is what I want to do, but also in a subject that I am passionate about and would love to share it to the world. Fast forward, now it is over 10 years. This is now something that I want to do forever. And today, would love to talk about like some of our journeys together and some of like Patrick's stories, and at the same time, like how can we as teachers or having yoga that has impact our life and knowing that is so helpful, how can we present this to the world right now? So let's enough about me. So let's talk a little bit about you. So before we start, I think it's let's talk about a little bit of a bigger picture, or maybe as unusual questions. So you have been teaching for 25 years, and you have studied with many yoga masters. And I have to say, like, is it fair to say that like we have seen quite a lot of like fall of grace of the yoga community or individual teachers? Why are you still here? Like, why do we still what we do? Like, why do we still practicing, still teaching? Like, what keeps you on the path? While, as I think we can see that many of the yoga teachers out there, they over time don't stay, or they go on a different path. So just wanted to share a little bit about your path of teaching and what keeps you on the path after decades of teaching.
Okay, yeah, good question. I don't know. When I found yoga early on, it didn't come to me as an interesting thing to do. It came to me in a way that it, by and large, saved me from a lot of my suffering, my anxiety, my worry, my experience as a young human in my family and in the social setting of school. Sort of beyond my own ability to recognize it, I was in a state of suffering. And, today in the culture, we talk about trauma. Certainly when I was young, it was like stiff upper lip, just carry on. And so when I finally touched yoga, it provided me this relief from some kind of inner turmoil. And of course, I didn't know that's what was happening, but the response to my life was so positive, I just kept going. So it wasn't this conscious, I'm going to try yoga. It was like, yoga found me. And immediately I was like, I don't know why, but things are better. So I stayed. And it was a bit of a mixed route. I didn't find one type of yoga. I kind of just went on a journey reading and experiencing different types of yoga over time. And that is true for my whole path. Even the years of my teaching, it's been a migration from teacher and style to different teacher and style, as I knew what I thirsted for was a deeper experience of knowing myself. So what started as sort of relief from pain has transformed into, this is an incredible experience. That as much as I love to travel and have outer experiences, yoga is this world within that I'm constantly journeying to every day, a little bit every day. And that provides me this interest and curiosity about life. So when you say like, why have I stayed? It's that it provides me with this sort of upliftment to the purpose or the I would say the motivation to do anything. I when I was young, I had many experiences that I look back on now with a smile, because it showed me that when I went to college, I started the first major I chose was anthropology. And then about 20 minutes later, it was biology.
Right.
And about 3 months later, it was, I'm going to be a wildlife biologist, and then it was a kinesiologist. I basically changed majors, I think, more times than there were majors, until they just like, that was it. And what happened was I eventually left college without finishing. So I like to say, like, I'm a college dropout. There's still hope for the dropouts, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. But why I bring that up is that I did many things when I was young. I did so many things. I tried every sport, traveled as far and as wide as I could, never feeling satiated. Now, I used to think that was, I'm just an explorer, which I am, but yoga has shown me that maybe part of that was a bit of fear and a lack of discipline to stay with anything. So yoga is kind of the first thing that I was able to say, you know what? This is providing me something really valuable, and I want to be good. I want to put myself into this path and become something. I want to become competent at a level where I feel a strength in my own being that I can then turn around and give something back to the world that's valuable, which then takes us into the act of teaching, right? You said earlier your desire to teach came from when you were young, and I didn't realize it, but I'm similar to you. I didn't know that I wanted to teach. That was never, wasn't thinking that way. But now once I found the path of teaching, wow. I mean, teaching for me is, I think it's found not only in the sort of classical role of teacher, it's in all stages of life, in all relationships. There's an opportunity to teach. And I think that the generosity that teaching expresses is when we do it from a place of sincere service to the benefit of other people, whether it's your kids or students in your class or humanity at large, if you really want to offer generously anything that you have had as an experience or knowledge you've attained for the service of others, that sort of link, generously giving our experience to the service of other people, once you have that, a true contact of that, there's nothing higher. It leaves you feeling so connected to, I feel like, every teacher that's ever lived. There's this feeling of like being a conduit, for lack of a better term, like channeling the timelessness of wisdom that exists in all places. That there's this thing of like, we have to help each other. And so the role of teacher is a small component of that in a class. And so the chance to do that each day I've never not wanted to teach the class I'm about to teach. Like that sounds very maybe corny, but I've been tired. I've come back from a rave, hungover. All sorts of conditions. And I've never, before I walk in the room, felt like I wish I wasn't teaching this class. And that I'm like, wow, I will continue.
It's quite rare though in the yoga industry, right? And I totally resonate with you. Like I think I resonate with you. One, like yoga found us. I was a little bit the same. I think when we were just not finding the right thing, then we just like try this, try that. And when we found yoga, I think, or yoga found us, we're like, okay, you know what, this is what we meant to do. So you talk about like purpose. That said though, I do think that, being a yoga teacher now, is quite, like I struggle, right? It seems like there's a lot of noise out there. And I also see many of our friends or teachers, they kind of step away or stagnant I found it very not easy to stay on the path as a yoga teacher or even as a practitioner. So I do think that having a role of purpose is really helpful. But would you talk a little bit more about like how can we cut out the noise and stay in the lane right now, right? Because in some ways I think yoga is beautiful because it has so many definitions. Like people come in looking for different things and their experience is so personal, but that also makes it very hard to define. And so it's not like, okay, you go to a workout, there is almost like a tangible result that you're looking at, but yoga becomes really hard to define and it's not about results and goals. So it makes it quite hard for us to stay in the path because there's no end, there's no goal. And how can we stay in, as you said, the discipline of it, and while at the same time feeling still like motivated and keep going, right? You have been keep going for a long time, and not only as a teacher, also your own practice as well, which is something, again, is quite rare. And the reason why we're not only, you were my teacher over 10 years ago, and the reason why I'm still studying with you, because you keep practicing, you keep evolving, you keep learning. And again, this is not so common in the yoga world right now, I feel, right? So how can we, and obviously I would like to do that, right? To keep going, keep evolving, keep learning, because I think lifelong learning is important. So would like you to share about how can we do that?
Yeah. I would accredit a lot of my whatever development or whatever potential progress or value I've been able to achieve through yoga. I would credit most of it to my teachers, and I would credit the other part to my students, mostly because I feel like I was very, I won't say lucky, but maybe I'm thankful that when I found yoga, it was at a time when you could only learn yoga by being in the room with a human or by reading a book.
Yeah.
And at the time, there were very few books, actually.
Yeah.
And they were, compared to the moment we're in, very few teachers. So the teachers that were available were quite profound. And in that, I was kind of, I was luckily enough to find myself in the stream of yoga at a time where if you were really interested in yoga, you would start to ask about who was good and where you could learn, and you would learn quite quickly. There was someone, I was in Vancouver at the time. Oh, there's somebody in Seattle that's really profound. And so we would journey down to Seattle and like go to the studio and take a class with this teacher and be very profound. You would have to really put effort in to learn. They would have to fly somewhere and go into a room with someone that you end up on the first day not really liking their approach, but you'd flown all the way, so you stayed. And you did the 5 days in Denver, or the 5 days in wherever it was, and you kind of suffered through it. And through that, you learned a lot of things. You'd learn the technique they were teaching, and you would learn, well, I'm here now, so I got to stay. Right. Where today, I think it's a bit trickier for people because the information is so readily available. There's very little required buy-in. People can look online at anything, and so they can get answers to everything, but there's been no effort to gain that. So then there's no traction with the information itself. So I think those early years provided me with this, let's say, hard-won ground of my practice that was, I had to overcome a lot of obstacles, traveling and being accepted into certain groups or certain teachers' programs, that now it's quite easy. Now, that early sort of bedrock of my practice also came under the auspicious conditions that I fell into the mix of some profound teachers that turned out to be far more profound than I was ready for. So I had this glow of these very senior, not in age, but in sort of position in the yoga world, looking at me and me knowing that the best thing I can do now is to do good in their eyes. It's like a parental relationship almost. Like practice under their gaze and seek feedback and some response from them, which again really gave me a lot of momentum and motivation to then parlay that into my students. So over time, this dynamic of learning from these teachers and feeling very connected and even responsible for what they were teaching me. I felt responsible. They were teaching me this, that I had to go and teach it as well as I was taught, which is impossible, right? I mean, like I barely scratched the surface from where my teachers really existed in yoga. However, that's very motivating. And I suppose the privilege of continuing has also been because I was in the wave of yoga. I'm not blind to the moment that I was in a period of yoga when I started practicing where it was very before the explosion that we all know yoga's been through. And I happened to open yoga businesses at this early moment where it all took off. So there was some luck in my stars that allowed me to have, a healthy business and a healthy audience of students and a great relationship within the movement of yoga, I would call it, through the late 90s, early 2000s, all the way through to, let's say, COVID. Now, that momentum has helped me keep going. I mean, my teachers either sadly have passed on or retired, or I've finished my studies with them and I'm no longer in contact with them. But my students are, as you were a good example, are so invested in the yoga that it gets me out of bed. I mean, the students have become my gurus, because when I think of you or my dedicated students that I'm really close with, I think I want to do good for you. So my study and my practice is like this beautiful, motivated offering to keep this whole process of everyone learning and getting some value and some benefit, keeping it going,
Right. I think that that's interesting that to hear about your journey is you kind of started yoga when it was a lot more fewer teachers and yogas were mostly like more lineage and school based,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So meaning that if you go to Iyengar studio, you study with the Iyengar teachers and their specific method and language, or you go to Ashtanga school
Right.
or whatnot. So you follow almost like it was more like a teacher student or teacher well mentor student relationship that has it seems like the yoga industry has evolved into something else. Like right now you can
Right.
actually go to like, and then after that it was like I would go to hatha class and vinyasa class. You will actually see people going to Iyengar class and Ashtanga class and yin, right? Which I think in the very beginning it was less like that. And you
Yeah,
would
you're
go
right.
to school and you follow a teacher, almost like, you know, you like a band and you the groupies and you follow
Yeah,
a
yeah,
little
yeah,
bit
yeah.
like that.
Yeah, well, you see the the MMA. I don't do MMA, but it seems like every other podcast is presented by an MMA artist. But the MMA world, the mixed martial arts, is that it? Yeah, is kind of I think a good mirror for yoga. Where in the let's say the '80s, right when I was young. You'd see Bruce Lee or Jackie Chan, or you'd see Chuck Norris, or you'd see Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson. You'd see people who are very specific to a type of discipline.
Yes.
I'm a boxer, I'm heavyweight, or I'm a jujitsu, or I'm a karate, or whatever. And then it became like the MMA is like you get in the ring and you can use whatever discipline you want. And yoga has sort of merged in the same way. Where when we were growing the studios, the Pure Yoga studios, I remember because I was still studying in specific channels. Like I was going to Iyengar teachers for Iyengar training. I was going to Anusara training with John Friend. I was going to these different schools, and I would kind of hide the fact that my studio taught everything. That was like a big taboo. Like what do you? So are you an Iyengar teacher? No. You're not an Anusara teacher?
Right.
Well, yes. But it's like we would provide hot yoga, yin yoga, all styles. And that was actually looked down on. To your point now, that's the only way. Now everything is
Right.
everything.
That makes me think about a couple of things. One is that like if let's say today I want to think about I want to study yoga and I want to find a good teacher. I don't know how anymore. You go on internet, it's like how can I find a good teacher? Back then there's a school, they say okay, I want to study yoga, that's where you go, or I want to find the Ashtanga practice, and that's one way that I go. Or you could follow like a couple of teachers and they're like a handful. Like right now, if I say, oh, I want to study yoga seriously, I don't know like where to go, like, look at people's bios, that doesn't exist. And that also going back to then, like if I want to be a good teacher, I kind of don't know what that really means anymore. You see what I'm trying to get to?
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, like, it's interesting because you've gone through the time where it was more like a yoga school to more becoming styles of practices
Right.
to now where are we, like what makes yoga like if in a sense of like if I'm a student looking for teachers, like what is yoga like that is I would say that I think we would agree that yoga can be so helpful for us. So why is it helpful, and how can where do we find like yoga that is actually helpful beyond what we sometimes see right now is like the more like physical exercise and things like that, and as a practitioner, as a student, because teachers are students, right? Lifelong students. And how can we find the yoga that is honoring the practice itself, and in a world right now that it seems to be so much information, we don't really know what yoga is anymore, and how can we have that discernment?
if we look at yoga, and I do this for myself often because you can get sort of sidetracked into the business of yoga and sort of sometimes get a little bit far from what the purpose of yoga is. So I kind of circle back and I go, in the beginning of yoga, it was a practice of meditation. And meditation is also interesting these days, how it's many things to many people. So, but as a simple framework, meditation is the practice of observing our mind. So it's not observing our mind with the intent of becoming more productive or effective or smarter or anything like that. It's just the ability to observe, what does my mind do? And then maybe why? You could add that piece. So then let's move forward. And over the eras of yoga, it's transformed into many different practices. The primary one today would be, let's say, asana, where our studios and our teaching exists. So asana, in the same way, if we look at it in the same way as meditation, you go, okay, let me observe my mind and body while I do the practice. Because maybe one difference between asana and meditation is that meditation is like sit down, close your eyes, and kind of, don't worry about the body so much, just observe the mind. But in asana, we say, let's observe the body and the mind and see where these two interrelate. And so the practice of asana then becomes this place where you might get fit, you might get
or may not.
thin, you might get strong, you might get flexible.
Yeah.
But by and large, based on the central thesis of yoga, that's not the point. The point would be to, let's say, connect to your selfhood as profoundly as possible, given the time that we have. So what does that mean? It means like, can you be here as you are, regardless of the circumstance? And then the circumstance becomes stand on your head, twist, back bend, arm balance. There's all these things. Can you adjust yourself? Can you be here completely given the fact that you're very uncomfortable, or and that what the mind does is the mind accepts or rejects continually. It says, oh, this pose is great, I love this pose, or this is hell, get me out of here. And if you take us back to the meditation, there's the yoga. The yoga is, can I not follow the reaction of my mind and just, for lack of a better term, be here as I am right now in any circumstance. And I find that relationship is very interesting. But as you said, the yoga has changed. So now people, and I have in the past, crank the music, turn the heat on, scream and yell, and there's very little room for anyone to actually reflect on what's actually happening for me. I imagine sometimes yoga classes can seem like you're in a crowded Oasis concert and everyone's screaming the lyrics, of which I'm excited to go to soon. But the externalized experience, it's like the gym, 10 more reps, with the mirror and all that. And we can get caught in this external representation and desire all these changes. I want to be smarter, more productive, healthier, fitter. And that disconnects us sometimes to who we are right now.
I certainly have been one of those. Yes.
Yeah, it's like, I don't like who I am. Yeah. So I'm going to use yoga or meditation or whatever else to become who I want to be. And you're like, okay, you can do that. But that is a slippery slope that will often take you away from yourself and demand you arrive at some destination down the road where you're the version you like. And the problem with that is people never get there. So you can fall into the trap of never actually being comfortable with who you are. Tight hamstrings, tight hips, okay, weak arms, or my mind, people say, my mind's so scattered I can't meditate, or I'm too stiff, I can't do yoga. And you're like, that's when you know you're missing the point. That's not the point.
Well, I think you and I know, because we're in this together and we meant to do this forever, is that yoga is really helpful. But at the same time, this is my current joke in class, is like, if I really teach real yoga, is a hard sell. Right? It's a hard sell because it seems like, the world is more talking about performance, physical, aesthetics, like, as you said, all these tangible results that we people think what yoga is, right? Or we can fall into that trap of the external experience instead of actually the deeper aspects of yoga. Like even when I go to classes right now, I think there is like a certain message in the modern yoga that deeper usually means like range or aesthetic shapes, and that's what depth is, right? And so how can we actually speak about the deeper experience of yoga, of what it is that is truly helpful, than what I think we think is deep, which is the range.
Yeah.
At the same time, I'm also thinking about is wonderful that yoga is more popular now, right? So we have to balance between like the depth, and first define what that really means, but at the same time the accessibility, right? Meaning that being accessible to more people, right? So more people really experience the depth of yoga, which do you get what I'm trying to say though?
Yeah. Let me
because like,
let me see. Like what I hear you saying is, how do we? What does it mean to have a deep experience in yoga? What I hear you saying is like what you're finding in your experience with your students maybe is that people misrepresent what depth is instead of a deep experience themselves. It's an external depth. It's like the shape of the pose, a deeper back bend or something.
And there's one part of it, and the other part is like there are more people coming to yoga, right? Meaning that we somehow have to make it more accessible as well, including physically, but also beyond the physical aspects of yoga. So sometimes I kind of like struggle with this balancing between the accessibility with depth and what that.
I would say a couple of things. One, if what we're talking about is teaching, I kind of hear that in your question, like how to teach in the way that you're sharing. I would say that the most important thing as a teacher is to be authentic. And what that means is teach what you know, teach what you have experienced, and tell people about it. That's to me what teaching really is, rather than trying to mitigate the market and to see like, where will I best land? Now, I know that's kind of easy for me to say when I'm standing with a successful business and all that, and I realize that can sort of sound sort of cheap, but unfortunately, it's 100% true for me that when we tell people exactly what happened for us and show them what we can do and why it's worth doing it, then people have the chance to, in a very honest way, take what we're offering. When we kind of make it fit for them, it gets quite diluted, I find. Now, the depth piece, I think, is mostly, for me, it's about being authentic is the goal for every human. So whether it's yoga or it's a 3-star Michelin chef, being your expressive, authentic self is the goal. And how yoga helps us do that is to be authentic means you have to know what you think and know what you feel and take action and speak words from that. And to do that is a lifetime's work. What we usually do is we listen to those around us, the world around us, and we try to answer them. So some people never get to who they actually are because they're constantly replying to their parents, their kids, their boss, and it becomes exhaustive.
Oh, it's just like fearful.
It's a pattern.
It's
a pattern. Yeah,
think.
You're basically answering to the world's demand. So it's like someone texting you, right? People will say this all the time. Oh, you have to text them back. Oh, I can't. I'm too busy. I have to message everyone back. It's like, okay. So as a metaphorical circumstance, it's like, well, what do you want to say? You know, Tim Ferriss, the famous podcaster guy, the 4-Hour Work Week, he has this great mantra. make before you manage, which I really like, which is in the mornings he tells his fans or his listeners to make before you manage, in that don't wake up in the morning and go and start managing your life, because management never ends. You have to start by making something that is authentic for you. And then once you've made something, go and manage everything. So it's sort of, for me, it's like, if I want to live my life and at the end of my life look back and feel a sense of fulfillment, that's going to require that I listen to whatever inner voice I have that was screaming out to do something uniquely mine. But if I don't listen to that, I'll never hear it. So people commonly never listen internally. They're only listening outside. TV's on, phones on, computers on. Everyone's running around. They're managing their billions of dollars. And they will end up at the end of the road, most likely very unfulfilled and actually like resentful. So I'll finish with this piece. So why does yoga help us? Well, because yoga is the idea of a practice. Dinacharya. Once a day, I do my practice. What's the practice? Well, who are you? Listen to yourself. So when we go to yoga, if you turn the music off and you give people a chance to do some poses and to breathe with themselves, it doesn't happen in one class, but it compounds over, as you said. Why keep going? Because the more you do it, it's like scuba diving. First 10 years of scuba diving, you're scared of getting eaten by sharks. 25 years later, you're like, it's fucking, it's fucking beautiful down here. And your kids are like, I'm gonna eat my sharks. And you're like, look at the coral. It takes years to hear the message that's within us. And when you start hearing it, you're like, oh my gosh, I like what is coming from me. And even if it's not like making a beautiful painting, or it doesn't have to be any cliche expression, it's like just living your life from the message that is actually you. And I feel like a daily practice offers us a chance to catch a glimpse of what that message is. And for me, that's what authenticity is. It's like a little by little, I start having my own ideas, my own expression of who I am, as opposed to listening for people to tell me who I am, you know?
You kind of touched base on like the question I actually want to ask you, like what is the quality of a like modern yoga teacher now? I think it's authenticity. This podcast is for yoga teachers mostly. So this is really mostly about teaching. So you would think I think it's fair to say that being authentic is the key. But it's not easy though. It takes takes a lot of courage to say what you mean what you say.
I would even go further than that. Yeah. It's not that it's not easy. It is very difficult.
It is.
And I would say that part of why, as your question earlier was, why I've kept going in yoga is that I've been very lucky to have a high volume of people that have passed through my classrooms over the years. And and one of the takeaways has been observing people and learning from the people I see. So it wasn't just me doing yoga and having some profound insight and yoga is so great. It was me teaching all of these beautiful messages from my teacher to these large groups of people and seeing them change. And in that, reflecting and going, wow, and learning something about myself as I watch these people have these transformative moments in yoga and realizing, oh my God, there is something deep here. It took me a long time to have these bigger moments for myself and discover my own, let's say, authentic voice. But the part about authenticity being difficult is that people, me, us, we tend to disqualify that there's something more than we think. We like, and the world at large is this, we think that thinking is life. Whoever thinks the best, whoever has the best words, wins. Whereas we end up repeating all these words. So often we're not even saying our own thoughts. We're saying what we read last night. We're saying, and a lot of that can be positive, but still the question will be somewhere within us, what are my words? Who am I? And so teaching yoga is, for me, become the path of authenticity. Like, how do you say who you are? How do you tell people, what does it mean to me? And that's maybe what you mean by that's scary, because it's easier just to repeat the book I read last night. But when I say it's about me, it's usually going to be about my difficulties, authenticity is really a fruit, I think, of going through like shitty times. You don't become authentic because you flew first class with Emirates. You don't become authentic because you went on a 3-month holiday in the Maldives. You, I think, become authentic because there's no other fucking way. That it is through hardship that we bump up against our authentic self. And then from that, we start to have sort of a chance to be like, well, there's nothing for me to lose, you know?
I'm going to end with this. And, I think I'm first of all, it's so lucky to have you with me, not just today, but like really being my teacher for over 10 years. And I know probably 10 more, 20 more years, as long as we can do. And this is really rare. I mean, from day one, I met you and we keep going, and you have built an amazing yoga community. So yoga can be so alone, and teaching, you're talking about like, it's like a lot of like coming from ourselves. And if we don't have each other, oh my God, I guess like we can go crazy in our head and we're not so sure like what we're doing. Did I say the right thing? Did I say the wrong thing? Actually the whole self journey, can be really daunting without other people giving you feedback or listening to you. It's so great that we have each other, because nobody like we can only be with each other because we can talk about like hours and hours of yoga. Like if we had talked to other people, they're like, please back off. So we have each other, which is great. The community that you have built, or the hundreds and thousands of students that have studied with you, and you keep that going, is super rare. So you have a great career, you build a great business, but you decide now to start your own school, Wild Lotus. Tell us a little bit about why do that. And I think I know the answer, but I would like to hear that from you, and your vision and your mission about bringing out this school, and what is your vision for yoga and your teachers and students. And that would be a good way to
Wild Lotus.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for asking. I was so fulfilled being a student of my main teachers over the years, and I absolutely loved carrying the torch for these teachings that I was given under the banner of the schools I was with. And then those schools basically went away, or my teachers passed away. And so I was left over COVID with no root teacher and no real allegiance to any core path. And when I reflected on that, I realized that my approach to yoga was actually a combination of the main teachers I've had, which gave it a unique environment. And so my common question from students or from people across the world who I would meet and say, like, what do you teach?
Right.
And so I've, realized people like names. So when I named my school Wild Lotus, a term that I've used for years as a class title, now it's the school, the platform of teaching, Wild Lotus, I am encouraging people to take refuge under a name so that they can identify with the values that they teach from and practice from. And so I did some real contemplative looking back on all the teachings that I've been given, and I realized that there's three main wheels, I call them 3 wheels of teaching. That was spawned from the fact that in my business, there's a lot of struggle within the business and the teaching community of how do I improve my teaching? And so I divided them up into 3 wheels, and one wheel is the content of the class or the practice, which is the sequence, the poses, in an intelligent order, which is like a recipe of making some dish, and how we need to have a better way for the majority of these teachers to develop sequences that have good value and that produce good results, consistent results. So there's that first wheel. The second wheel is the intricate and sophisticated alignment teachings. And that is a deepening of a teacher's career and often missed. And so I have created a canon of teachings that align the poses. So you have the sequence doing it, and you have the alignment, which is improving the pose over time by these teachings. And the third wheel is the philosophy, which is kind of like a part of the questions you've had on this hour with me, which is like, why bother? Why bother keep going? Why bother continuing to practice? And that's really the heart of Wild Lotus, which is sort of, I don't want to say a coaching element, but it's like a supportive aspect of teaching, not through instructions. It's not telling people what to do. It's encouraging people to ask themselves questions. You know, how do you feel? What do you think? What do you want to do? Who do you want to be? As we have options every day, you know, we have options of how we're going to be and who we're going to be. And so these three wheels make up the School of Wild Lotus. And it's been met with some great success already. And we have teachers like yourself in Singapore, and it's taking off in China and in Europe. And it's a really exciting moment because, as you said, yoga is the teachings, the practice, and it's a community.
Yeah.
So although I'm a teacher, I feel like what I wish for too is I want a community. Part of why I teach is that I love yoga, and you go to a classroom and you got other people that love it. I want to be together. So the aim is to develop a network of teachers that share the knowledge and help each other improve, and to support each other through the challenges of whether it be practice, teaching, or even the business of yoga studios, those three components.
I think that is really needed in yoga right now, because I think it's so scattered right now, and having someone to bring the community together, to put in the school, put in the structure, I think that's super helpful. So well, I'm so happy to be part of that community and helping you to grow this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your stories, your wisdom, and also help me set a tone of this podcast. And thank you everyone for listening. I would love to hear your reflections and what does yoga mean to you right now. Share your thoughts with me on Instagram or in my PlayGround newsletter. Until next time, keep practicing, keep playing, and keep grounding.